We were warned never to open the old well behind our house. So of course we did. At exactly midnight, something climbed out. It knew our names. It used our voices. It followed us inside. This is not a story. This is a warning. Started with a warning nobody took seriously. Behind our house, hidden beneath overgrown weeds, broken bricks, and years of neglect, there was an old well. Most people didn't even know it existed. It wasn't marked on any map, and visitors never noticed it unless someone pointed it out. The few who did know about it avoided talking about it openly except the elders. They always said the same thing in the same serious tone: never open it, especially after sunset. No explanation, no details. Just fear in their eyes. The well had been sealed for decades with a thick concrete slab, cracked and weathered by time. Moss had grown around the edges like nature itself was trying to hide it. My grandfather once told us it was closed after an incident. That was the exact word he used. Every time we asked what kind of incident, he went silent, or suddenly remembered something else he needed to do. As kids, we laughed it off. We thought it was just another village story, something adults made up to scare children into behaving. For years, the well stayed forgotten, until strange things began happening. It started small. Our dogs, who usually roamed freely at night, began refusing to go near the backyard. It would stop suddenly, tails low, ears flat, and whine softly before running back inside. At first, we thought it was snakes or some wild animal. Then came the sounds. Sometimes around midnight, when everything else was silent, we heard a faint noise drifting through our windows. Drip, drip. It sounded like water falling. Into water, but the well was supposed to be dry, completely dry. We even checked old records. No water source had existed there for years. The air around the well felt wrong. Whenever I went near it, my chest felt tight, like it was harder to breathe. Even on warm nights, the space around the well was cold. Not just cool and naturally cold. Standing there felt like the ground itself was watching. Waiting sleep became difficult. Every night, just before midnight, I woke up for no reason at all. Every time I felt an overwhelming urge to look toward the backyard, toward the well. It was like something was calling, not loudly, but persistently. Curiosity slowly turned into obsession. We talked about it constantly. What was inside? Why was it sealed? What really happened during that incident? One evening, my cousin finally said what all of us were thinking. "Let's open it," he said casually. "Just a little. Let's see what's inside." We hesitated. For a moment, the elders' warnings echoed in my mind, but curiosity won. "It's probably nothing," he added with a laugh. That was our first mistake. We chose a night with no moon. The sky was completely black, the kind of darkness where even familiar places feel unfamiliar. Clouds covered the stars, and the air was unnaturally still, as if the night itself was holding its breath. At exactly 11:30 p.m., we stepped into the backyard with 2 flickering flashlights and an old rope we found in the storage room. The well stood there silently, half hidden by shadows. We didn't speak much. Every sound felt too loud: our footsteps on the dirt, the nervous clicks of the flashlight switches, even our breathing. My cousin placed his hands on the concrete slab and looked back at us one last time, as if waiting for someone to stop him. No one did. With a deep push, we dragged the slab aside. The moment it moved, a rotten smell exploded into the air. It was thick and heavy, crawling into our noses and throats. It smelled like wet soil, rusted metal, and something far worse, something that reminded me of decay, but not the kind that comes from death. This smelled live. We stepped back, covering our faces. My eyes watered instantly. The air around the well felt colder than before, like a freezer had been opened beneath our feet. I aimed my flashlight inside. The beam barely reached the bottom. The well wasn't as deep as we had imagined, but the darkness inside didn't behave normally. Instead of bouncing back, the light seemed to vanish, as if the darkness was swallowing it whole. The stone walls looked slick, almost breathing. Then we heard it. A soft splash. Not loud, not sudden, just enough to be heard. We froze. No one said a word. Even the insects around us went silent. The well was supposed to be empty. My cousin swallowed hard, slowly lowered the rope into the darkness. We watched as it slid down, inch by inch, disappearing into the black. The rope kept going, then suddenly stopped. It didn't hit the bottom. It stopped halfway down. My cousin tugged it gently. There was resistance, like something was holding. The other end, his hands began to shake as he pulled harder. When the rope finally came back up, it was wet. Not with water, the rope felt warm. Unnaturally warm. Before we could react, a sudden gust of wind rushed past us, strong and cold, carrying that same rotten smell. The well came a sound that drained all the blood from my face. Breathing, low, slow, patient. It wasn't struggling. It wasn't angry. It sounded like something that had been waiting then. In the distance, a clock chimed. Midnight. And the breathing grew louder. The breathing grew louder. It was no longer coming from deep inside. The well, it was close. Echoing. Against the stone walls, slow and deliberate, like whatever was down there had finally noticed us. My flashlight began to flicker, the beam shaking as my hands trembled. For a split second, the light caught movement. Something was crawling upward. Didn't climb like a human. It didn't even climb like an animal. It slid along the stone walls, its body bending and folding in ways that made my stomach turn. Its bones cracked softly as it moved, adjusting itself to fit the narrow space. The sound was wet, unnatural. Then, a hand appeared over the edge. The skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over thin bones. Oh, God. The fingers were far too long, and the joints bent backward, twitching as if they were learning how to move. Black liquid dripped from the fingertips and disappeared back into the darkness below. We couldn't breathe. One by one. More of it emerged from the well. A shoulder, a twisted arm. A head that wasn't shaped like a head at all. There were no eyes, just smooth, empty skin where they should have been. No nose. Only a wide, dark mouth opening and closing silently. Like it was tasting the air. The smell grew stronger. The air around us became heavy, pressing against our chests, making every breath feel like a struggle. My legs refused to move. My mind screamed to run, but my body wouldn't listen. It felt like the ground itself was holding us in place. The thing stopped halfway out of the well. It tilted its head slowly, as if listening to something we couldn't. Here, the silence stretched painfully long. Then its mouth opened wider than it should have been, and a sound came out. A whisper. Not words, names, my name, my cousin's name. Our voices perfect, exact, like recordings played back to us. I felt my blood turn cold. My ears rang. Every memory, every fear rushed into my mind at once. The thing leaned forward slightly, as if recognizing us, as if it had known us for a long time. Then my cousin screamed. The sound shattered whatever was holding us. The spell broke. We dropped the flashlights and rope and ran without looking back, our feet barely touching the ground. We burst into the house and slammed the door, locking it with shaking hands. For a moment, there was silence. Then the whispering started again. It came from the backyard, then from the walls, then from the ceiling. Finally, it came from inside. The house right behind us at 12:17 a.m., the lights went out, not gradually, not flickering. They died all at once, plunging the house into complete darkness.
Oh.
The whispering stopped instantly, like someone had pressed a switch. The sudden silence was worse than the noise it made my ears ring. For a moment we stood frozen, listening to our own breathing, waiting for something to happen. Then we heard its slow footsteps. Wet footsteps, they came from above us. Something was walking across the roof, each step heavy and deliberate, dragging. Slightly, as if whatever it was had to think about how to move. Dust fell from the ceiling with every step. The sound moved in a circle, passing over each room, stopping briefly above Uaz's, listening. Whatever came out of the well wasn't trapped outside. It was circling the house. Then came the scratching knot. Knocking, scratching, long uneven strokes. Against the front door, like claws testing the surface, learning its shape. The sound moved slowly across the wood, pausing at the handle. We held our breath, terrified that the door would suddenly open. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the hallway. A shadow slid across the wall, taller than any human, stretched. Unnaturally thin, its edges trembling like smoke. It moved without making a sound, and stopped just outside. My bedroom door, the handle didn't turn. It only waited minutes past. Or hours. I couldn't tell. Then silence. No footsteps, no scratching, no breathing. We didn't sleep that night. When the sun finally rose, pale and weak, we gathered the courage to step outside. The backyard felt wrong, like something had passed through and left the air broken behind it. The well was open again. The concrete slab pushed aside like it weighed nothing. Muddy footprints surrounded it. They didn't look human. The prints led from the well straight to our back. Doran then stopped, as if whatever made them had simply vanished, with shaking hands. We looked inside the well one last time. The stone walls were covered in fresh claw marks, deep and violent, cutting through rock as if it were soft clay. At the bottom, carved into the stone in uneven, jagged letters, were words that hadn't been there before. You opened IT. We sealed the well before sunset that same day. Chains, cement, iron. But some nights, when the house is quiet and the clock strikes midnight, I swear I hear slow breathing outside my window, waiting. We sealed the well before sunset that same day. This time we didn't hesitate. We wrapped thick iron chains around the mouth of the well, pulling them so tight they groaned against the stone. We mixed cement until our arms ached and poured it down carefully, layer after layer, until the opening disappeared beneath a hard gray surface. When it was finished, the well looked more like a grave than something meant to hold water. We didn't tell the neighbors. We didn't call the authorities. Some things can't be explained, and some explanations only invite more questions. What would we even say? That something crawled out of an old well and learned our names? That it wore our voices like masks? No one would have believed us. And deep down, we were afraid of something worse. What if opening it again made things stronger? I've slowly tried to return to normal, but the backyard never felt the same. Even during the day, the air above the sealed well felt heavier, colder. Birds avoided flying over it. Grass refused to grow where the shadow fell. And every night, just before midnight, our dogs would wake up and begin to whine, backing away from the windows, refusing to look outside. At exactly 12 a.m., the ground behind our house sometimes vibrates softly, not enough to feel with your feet, but enough to hear. A low hum traveling through the walls, through the bed frame, through your bones. It lasts only a few seconds, but it's always at the same time. It's always sleep. Never comes easily anymore. The house is quiet most nights, too quiet. And in that silence, I sometimes hear breathing that doesn't belong to anyone inside. Other times I hear footsteps that stop just outside my window. When I gather the courage to look, there's nothing there, only the sealed ground, cracked and uneven, as if something beneath it is pressing upward. And then there are the whispers. They don't come every night. That would be easier to ignore. They come randomly, softly, slipping into the silence like a thought that doesn't belong to you. The voice is familiar. It's mine, perfect in every detail. The tone, the rhythm, even the way I pause between words. Open it again. I never answer. I never look outside when I hear it because I know it's waiting. If you ever find an old well sealed for no reason behind a house, in a forest, or hidden beneath years of neglect, don't assume it's just abandoned. Don't tell yourself it's a myth. And never believe curiosity is harmless. Leave it closed, because some things aren't buried to keep. Us out there buried to keep them in. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like the video. Subscribe for more real horror stories, cursed places, and true night encounters. And remember, some stories don't end when the video does. Turn on notifications, because the next one might be closer than you think.